From The Times and The Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Luke Jones.
I recently spent time with a friend from a company called friend.com, and they have created this little pendant. It's about the size of a coin. You wear it around your neck. It's an always-on microphone, and it's powered by AI. It listens to everything you say all day, every day, and what's said to you, and then texts you and becomes a companion.
Danny Fortson is US West Coast correspondent for The Sunday Times, based in the heart of Silicon Valley, so he can't move for AI chat.
And I talked to the founder. He's 22 years old, and he's like, yeah, we can be friends with algorithms now, and we should be getting comfortable with this.
But as 2025, a year so giddy about AI, comes to a close, Danny, surprisingly, thinks a change of heart is underway.
And you kind of step back and you're like, is that what this is all about? Is that what this revolution is really bringing us? We're spending trillions of dollars. We're being promised this future where work will be optional, where we'll be able to live forever, cure all disease, all aided by these AI systems. But what we have now is what appears to be a micro-targeted jobs recession for young people and a bunch of kind of ridiculous toys. We're being promised this amazing future, but I think more and more people are just like, this sucks. And this is gonna suck.
The story today is 2026, the year of the AI backlash.
So if we just take a step back, this all started for most people in November 2022 with the launch of ChatGPT. And it was the arrival of this thing that felt like magic.
Move over, Google. Here comes ChatGPT. Instead of your computer directing you to information, ChatGPT provides it for you in detailed text.
This chatbot that could pass standardized tests, write poetry, sounds like a human. And it was really this moment that set in motion what we're seeing now, which is this incredible AI boom that has really taken hold over these last 3 years. Close to 900 million people every week use ChatGPT. Over 600 million people every week use Google's Gemini. So these are, by many objective measures, the most popular new consumer products that have ever been created in terms of going from zero to a lot, right? And people really like them. They find them useful. They help improve their work, make them more efficient, all of that stuff. So there is a great kind of uptake of these tools, but I think the backlash will come when you start to see, and we're starting to see, what that's going to do to societies and critically to jobs.
So it's not necessarily a creeping disappointment with the product, because to be fair, there is broadly still quite a gap between the AI any of us would use and what we're told it will eventually do for us. You don't think that's the problem. It's just the great change will still come, and it's how we feel about it.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, there are major issues with these systems. They are very good at certain things, but I think the move fast and break things approach at how quickly these have been rolled out is starting to have some really pretty terrible consequences when you look at the number of people, millions of people, who are using these AIs as companions, as therapists, kind of relying on them as almost like companions in their conspiracies. There's a rise of AI psychosis, where people kind of lose touch with reality, aided on their way there by AIs who egg them on. We've even seen cases where people have taken their own lives, egged on by their chatbots, or allegedly egged on by their chatbots. And of course, the industry will say, well, look, this is not our fault. These people were already very troubled. But you start to see that when you roll out something to nearly 900 million people starting from scratch in 3 years, there's going to be a lot of what they would call, in the tech world, negative externalities as well.
Gosh, what a heartless phrase. But also, is there as well a sense in which there's such a proliferation of AI products, and we'll talk later about what that means for financial questions about the whole basis of this industry. But some of them are just doing things which we don't really need or want or might have a use for. I take the point that ChatGPT has been very useful for lots of people, but there is a lot of rubbish producing slop, maybe filling a gap in the market isn't actually really there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is what's going to be interesting in 2026 is kind of, okay, you have these chatbots, but what are they going to be the products that people pay for? What are the things that are actually going to be like, oh, this is actually super useful. This has become an integrated part of my life versus, as you say, something that generates slop, hallucinates, gives you wrong answers, that kind of stuff. But these systems today they're the worst they're ever going to be. They're only going to get better from now, right? And that is one of the things that, the industry loves to say is that, this is just getting better and better and better. And they say, I don't know if you've heard the term. Have you heard the term, the San Francisco consensus?
No.
So the San Francisco consensus is that within 3 to 5, 7 years, somewhere in that range, we are going to cross over into an era where we have AGI, artificial general intelligence. Now, this is a squishy term, but it broadly means these systems that are not only smarter than the smartest physicist or the smartest mathematician or what have you. They are smarter than like the sum of all human intelligence. And that they can self-improve. And that at that point, that is what, it's kind of gets into science fiction land. But you talk to some of the boosters, like this is humanity's last invention. You'll hear that term a lot as well. Because once we hit AGI, where these things become autonomous and self-improving, we can ask them to just cure climate change, cure cancer, help us, live forever. All of these kind of really far out ideas. That is what we are running toward or trying to run toward. And if you talk to OpenAI, if you talk to Anthropic, the maker of Claude, even Sir Demis Hassabis at Google, they all think this is not science fiction. This is real and it's going to happen very soon, which is why this boom has been so extreme and why they're spending so much money.
But then how does this fit into your understanding of there being a backlash against it? That all sounds great. Yeah. Cure cancer. Sort all these big intractable issues for us. Devise Middle Eastern peace. What's the backlash element of that?
But does it?
Okay, go on.
For example, I recently spent some time with the Stanford Digital Economy Lab, and they did a really interesting study. They started basically from the end of 2022 through present day, and they got access. There's a company called ADP, which is the biggest processor of kind of salary checks in America. So they have like an incredibly unique view of the U.S. economy. And they did this really in-depth research at jobs, new jobs, hiring, firing, etc. And what they found was quite telling. They said specifically for young people, for university graduates in AI-exposed fields, what they call it, like law, engineering, customer service, etc., they saw a 13% drop in hiring for 22 to 25-year-olds. And their conclusion was, look, these systems are already very good at repetitive tasks, things you would give your junior lawyer or whatever, someone fresh out of uni. We've heard anecdotally that it's really hard to find a job these days, economy's growing slowly, etc. But what that looks like is a jobs recession micro-targeted at young people. That is a problem for society. When you have Silicon Valley saying, look, this vision of the future we're building is going to be so fantastical and so science fiction. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a new era of abundance. But today, I can't get a job because there's this new army of digital workers who can do it better, faster, cheaper than I can. And these companies are trying to build this new digital army into the millions that is going to compete directly with me for a job to give me meaning, to give me income, to let me live a good life. And I think that is one of the big flashpoints you're going to start to see more and more. It's going to be more and more acute as we get deeper into this revolution.
And that is a known quantity. I mean, in all the businesses and companies that you talk to, are any of them thinking about that, preparing for that, not just the improvements it will give them in terms of, I guess it'll save them a lot of money, but also preparing for industrial action, backlash on that front?
They're not. And what's really interesting is if you talk to, because I've interviewed Sam Altman, OpenAI, I've interviewed Dario Amodei, who runs Anthropic, and they're all trying to ring the alarm bell. Dario Amodei told us, within 3 to 5 years, we could replace 50% of all white-collar work. Now, that sounds almost impossible, right? But he's like, look, this is coming. We should prepare. Governments should take really aggressive action to prepare the ground for that. We need to figure out how to retrain people. Maybe we need universal basic income so people at least can get a check so they can still pay the bills if all of a sudden they can't get a job. Like, these are very big, big, big changes. And they're saying this is coming. And then I think rightly, they're saying to the government, sort it out. We're telling you, you need to sort it out. And of course, governments just don't move that quickly. And so you're going to have this collision, if this continues, of increasing kind of social upheaval, increasing economic upheaval, and we don't have the scaffolding in place yet to really prepare for that. So it could be quite a violent meeting of those two worlds where it's, if you think of a data center as basically just a building full of highly capable digital workers, we're just building a new workforce that is competing with humans.
Danny, we're talking about artificial intelligence and the possible backlash that could be a front on various different aspects on it. You were talking there about what the known and expected future actually might hold for much of the workforce and how a big key of this is the data centers. Interestingly, there is already a backlash on the data center front. There might be pickets and protests in future years about people not being able to get grad jobs because all these large language models have taken them. But actually already we're seeing people out protesting just the fact that these data centers are in their neck of the woods.
DeKalb County, stop the data centers. Just one of the signs protesters waved tonight.
People over profit!
A busy street corner in downtown Saline becoming the latest display of anger from another Michigan town targeted in the AI data center boom.
So it's becoming increasingly common. And I think there's two things happening here. So one, you can't have AI without the data centers. The data centers are, if you think about oil, these are the oil wells of this industry, right? They're the ones that power this whole thing. They're these big warehouses full of very expensive chips, hugely power hungry, hugely resource hungry. If you are a rural town in Wisconsin, why do you want a data center there? Now, sure, it's going to generate some new tax income, but this is not a job creator, really. Once the thing is built, they don't really employ many people, maybe a couple dozen for a vast building. So it's not a source of employment. Often we're seeing reports of local communities seeing their energy prices rise because these are so power hungry.
The state of New Jersey on June 1st said many people's bills will go up 20%, partially because of AI. There's a lot of other reasons, but that is a driver. Connecticut, 71% increase in average residential bills in the last few years. California, 46%. Texas, 27%.
They require water to cool them. So oftentimes they're drawing on huge amounts of groundwater or local resources. I saw one story where people's well ran dry because the data center next door took all the water. So now they have brown water coming out of their taps.
We're on a well here, and we started having issues with our well in 2018. have to replace the hot water heater. I've replaced 2 washing machines and a dishwasher because of the sediment that's coming in.
There's huge implications for the local communities. And the basic question, which is understandable, is what's in this for me? What do we get out of this? It's not like it's a new shopping center where we can go, we can enjoy ourselves, we can get new employment. It goes back to that idea of this is a building full of new digital workers, which is going to make it harder for you or your kids to find work. So it's just the equation, if you think about it, is like these people are losing on numerous fronts and they're kind of saying, we don't want this. And then the other aspect is, this technology, it's a bunch of ones and zeros. It's a bunch of algorithms. The data centers are these very tangible kind of manifestations of this revolution. So, of course, you can show up in front of it. You can it's a physical thing you can go and protest against. So I think that's what is happening in the industry.
And people have.
And they continue to, all over the states, from New York to California and everywhere in between. Stepping back, it seems to me that this is almost like an act of desperation. Like this freight train is coming at society and at the economy so fast, and people are looking for ways to try to slow it down, and this is one of the few options that is right in front of them, so they're taking it.
The data center themselves also actually speak to another problem or challenge afoot, which is the true value of some of these investments that are being put into these companies. There's been a lot of concern about, okay, tens of billions is being put into building data centers, and that is generating on paper a lot of growth and commerce, but it's just a few companies pushing money around between the 3 of them or 4 of them.
That's right. That gets to the other kind of worry about this, is that the investment people are talking about is truly eye-watering. So choose your estimate, but between now and 2030, 2031, the industry expects to spend between 3 and 5 trillion with a T on new data centers.
Yeah.
Which is really extraordinary. And if you think about infrastructure build-outs, that is like the railroads or the canal system. It is a really kind of a generational thing that doesn't happen very often and is wildly expensive. And what's really interesting is, one of the companies at the centers of this is OpenAI. They have a very popular chatbot, but they're still a startup. They're losing a ton of money, tens of billions of dollars a year. And yet they have said they're going to spend 1.4 trillion in the next 4 years on data centers. Now, the question is if you're a loss-making enterprise, how do you come up with $1.4 trillion? Well, you have companies, your suppliers like NVIDIA, which is the maker of the chip, saying, hey, we know you don't have the cash, but we really want you to buy our stuff. So what we'll do is we'll invest in you. We'll give you $100 billion. And then you can turn around and recycle that $100 billion back into our stuff, buying our kit. And so you have a lot of these circular deals between, half a dozen companies effectively right at the heart of this. And the worry is that at some point, that kind of circular dance stops. The music stops. And that would be a problem for all of us because, of course, what they call the Magnificent Seven tech companies are now worth something like 40% of the S&P 500, the main U.S. stock market index. So if they crash, they're going to take the value of a lot of people's pensions with them. It's going to unleash just a huge amount of kind of chaos and pain in the stock market generally.
And not even crash necessarily. Is there a worry amongst Wall Street types that even if there's just a chunky consolidation and not a crash, that still could really screw up people's pensions? That could really leave lots of companies with, data center costs or even capacity, which maybe they don't need.
Yeah, absolutely. And as soon as you turn on a data center, it's 100% utilized. But will it continue to be as we roll this out?
And to continue your theory of backlash, I wonder how that comes into play here. Are there already people alive to those concerns and making changes or different investments as a result?
The most prominent person who is kind of betting on this, on the kind of the coming crash, is a guy called Michael Berry. And I don't know if you're a fan of The Big Short, the Hollywood film about the last financial crash. He was one of those people who was betting on the housing crash, and he bet right and made a lot of money. I think he was played by Christian Bale in the film. His next big bet is against NVIDIA in particular, which has ridden this wave because they're the maker of these kind of most sought-after chips. They're now worth $5 trillion, making them the most expensive company on the planet. He's saying, look, this is not sustainable. They're not being totally straightforward with how they're accounting for this stuff. Their chips aren't going to last nearly as long as they say they will, and that has huge implications for their financial model, et cetera, et cetera. NVIDIA, it must be said, completely dismisses his critique, says he's wrong. But he's a very prominent voice, and he's writing about it more and more kind of vociferously, saying, look, this is not sustainable. This car is going to crash into the wall.
And if he's a minority voice in Wall Street, are there any similar types? Obviously, they don't have the money to put where their mouth is on this front, but are we seeing this in politics? Are we seeing it in the cultural discourse around it? Or are we all still, in 2025 at the moment, wrapped up in this being just a fabulous wave that we're all going to ride and it's going to revolutionize our lives, please?
Yeah, I think this could become like a new front in kind of our populist politics. It hasn't yet, but I was listening to an interview with Gavin Newsom, the governor of my state out here in California, and he thinks this AI revolution will become one of the kind of tentpole issues of the 2028 election because, again, what you're really talking about is jobs and labor. And not to get too deeply political, but if you think about immigration becoming one of the tentpole issues both in Britain and in the US, what we're talking about is just the immigration of digital workers to replace humans, right? Now, it looks different, and this is replacing initially white-collar jobs, but the effect in many respects is the same. And if those trends continue that the Stanford Digital Economy Lab has seen of just a real sharp drop in hiring of new people, and that piece of the market continues to grow, that white-collar job recession that people are worried about, that is going to become an issue, absolutely. So I do expect this to become increasingly kind of the center of the bullseye in politics as we get deeper into this.
What did the big AI, I was going to say people, but I guess it is mainly men, isn't it? What are they saying to all of this? I mean, do they have an alternative pitch or framing that they are rehearsing now?
No, is the short answer, which is really interesting because so recently we had the Times Tech Summit and we had a bunch of data center builders on stage. And I asked one of them, how do you think about actually selling this as you kind of start this build out when communities are kind of like, why are we going to say yes to this? He kind of like waved his hand and was like, no, not really. That's kind of like not a thing.
It's a complicated question. I think you're kind of at the very front end of that reflex. The way that I view it is it's very inconsistent in how communities respond. So, for instance, if you go to certain jurisdictions in Texas, they're all in, right? If you try to build a data center on 34th Street in Manhattan, you're going to encounter significant resistance.
I think the industry is in desperate need of telling a better story. Because if we're, at point A and point C, let's call it, is this fantastical future of abundance where basically, in Elon Musk terms, work will be optional. How do we get there? Because right now, hundreds of millions of people work and need to work and base their identity around work and all of that stuff. But the industry is so busy marketing this kind of gauzy vision of the future that they're not concentrating on the here and now of like, you need to bring society along here, right? You need to kind of help people understand what's coming. You need to start putting some money into, if your vision is true, figuring out how to help people kind of transition to this new world, whether that's through retraining, different university degrees, new kind of types of apprenticeships, whatever it may be. But out here in Silicon Valley, I think of this place as a myth machine. They're really good at selling you a fairy tale. Every once in a while, that fairy tale comes true. But in terms of the actual practicalities of like, if we're going from point A to point C, what happens in point B, that messy bit in the middle? Because everybody agrees it's going to be messy, but no one's come up with a way to be like, okay, well, let's do this X, Y, or Z to help people kind of through that transition.
And is that partly the fault of the disposition of the kind of people who lead these companies? They're not necessarily interested in the in-between. They're blue sky dreamers.
That's right. And they're engineers. You know, they're engineers who are like, they want to build something. And they're building, you know, in their conception, like the greatest thing that's ever been built.
Just finally, Danny, would you identify as a cynic?
I know. Well, I'm just thinking about all the things.
Are you a natural gloomster about these things?
No. So I'm actually, you know, we can end on a rosy colored vision of the future. I think.
Please do.
I think the worries about jobs are real and merited. However, anytime there's a new technology, everybody freaks out about, oh, this is going to, you know, it's the end of pick your profession. But I think that's generally a pretty facile way to think about it. Because, and I've used this example before and it's niche, but I think it kind of gets to the point. You and I are talking on a podcast. Podcaster was not a job that existed 20 years ago. Neither was professional YouTuber. You know, there will be a whole new array of jobs that emerge that look different than what has come before. My tiny mind isn't equipped to figure out what all those will be, what they will look like. But I don't believe in just like, once we have this digital god that we have built. One, I don't believe in the San Francisco consensus. That'll be 3 to 5 years. I think it's going to take a lot longer. And even if we do get it, I don't believe that all of a sudden we're not going to have anything to do. Because the reality is, I talked to a startup founder in the AI world, and he said, this is like riding a jet ski in quicksand. And he was like, the jet ski is AI and quicksand is just real life. It's people, it's processes, it's governments. You can't just switch on the magic machine, get rid of all your people, and presto. That's just not realistic. So I think it's going to be more gradual. It's going to be more surprising than we can kind of conceive of right now. So in that sense, I guess I'm an optimist, but I am very cynical in the kind of the myth machine, the fairy tales that the industry is using to get what they want, which is remove the shackles, let us build, and we're going to deliver this amazing future for all of us. And yeah, it's going to be chaotic, but figure it out.
Danny, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Likewise.
Sunday Times US West Coast correspondent Danny Fortson. For more on him, you can listen to Danny and Times technology business editor Katie Prescott in the Times Tech podcast every week. We'll put a link to that in our show notes. Or if reading's your thing, Danny's articles, all of his articles, are available at thetimes.com if you've got a subscription. That is it from us today. The producer was Edward Drummond. The executive producer was Kate Lamble. Sound design was by Tom Birchall. And theme composition was by Mauro Seto. I'm Luke Jones. Happy New Year. We'll see you tomorrow.